We're going to talk a little bit more about this and where we go from here as a country. Let's bring in our panel right now. Ellis, Henican, columnist at Newsday, radio and TV commentator, and also Ford O'Connell, Republican strategist, both frequent contributors and guests to the show. We're very happy to see both of you guys, and they're both in New York City, but separated digitally by our 3-box here, so there will be no flailing and fighting each other, gentlemen. Let's get started here. During his presidency, President Obama has had to walk a tightrope when it comes to race in the United States. Some say he hasn't stayed on that tightrope, fallen off a few times. His presidency was once heralded as a post-racial triumph, but here we find ourselves after all of these protests. Ellis, President Obama, he didn't exactly make things better when it comes to the issues of race. Was he set up to fail, though?
Well, I have no idea what you're talking about. First of all, falling off the tightrope. The couple of realities here, right? He's the first black president in America, right? He's had a huge achievement in that world. People are proud of him on a personal level, even you guys who hate all his policies. And in fact, he has led to a calming and a franker discussion of all these issues than we ever got before. Doesn't mean the issues are solved. Doesn't mean it's fair for all poor black people in America. Doesn't mean civil rights is something we can forget about. But on balance, it's been a very positive and a good thing for America. And I thought the statement on the night of the decision by the grand jury was terrific. Calming, soothing, didn't stop the hoodlums on the street, but it was a good step, right?
Ellis, I couldn't disagree with you more. A recent New York Times CBS poll says 35% of Americans think that race relations have in fact gotten worse. And I think we did have unrealistic expectations of President Obama. We thought he could narrow this gap. We thought things would be a lot better. Unfortunately, they're not, and he has had a tendency to stub his toe, particularly with the Cambridge, Massachusetts incident with Henry Louis Gates, also jumping the shark with Zimmerman. And yes, I do think he hit the right tone with respect to Ferguson, but I think he should have been calming earlier. And really, at the end of the day, I think President Obama's biggest problem is he has a hard time differentiating between the president and being a black man. And unfortunately, Ellis, I think that is his biggest problem right now.
Why should he differentiate? Why not be honest, right? Don't we expect our political leaders to talk to us like grown-ups and say, listen,
Ellis,
I've got a job as president, but I'm a father of a couple of kids, I've got a wife, I've got a family, I've got this experience. That's a good thing for not something to hide.
I don't disagree with you, but we want them to be fair, and I think a lot of Americans don't think that President Obama has been fair with respect to what happens when certain racial issues pop up.
Let's also state the obvious here too. We're 3 white guys talking about the issue of race here, but it does affect us. And Ellis, I also want to mention something else too that's a truth about President Obama is, yes, he is technically the first black president, but he's also just as much white as he is black, and his experience growing up is far different than a lot of African Americans who grew up in this country.
Now you're going
hold on, John,
John, that's silly.
But he has international experience. He did not.
People.
I'll let you answer that, Ellis. Go ahead.
I'm just saying you're representing 350 million people, and if he has nosedived anywhere since 2009, it's with white working class blue collar voters. Frankly, he was at a 49% approval rate with him in 2009, and now he's down to 21%. I think Chuck Schumer's hit the nail on the head, and that is it's because he didn't focus on all of America and didn't focus on strengthening the middle class, and I think that that's what's hurt him, and I think that that's why sometimes when he weighs into racial issues, it seems like he's favoring one side versus being fair for all of America.
And let's acknowledge something else that is absolutely true. There are some people out there in America, we even know some of them. I got some relatives who are like that, who still have some pretty backwards ideas about race. I mean, certainly the reactions to what went on in Ferguson very heavily broke down on racial lines. That can't be an accident. There are people, John and Ford, who really are still possessing I'm trying to say this delicately, but
well, save it, Ellis, save it, because we want to give it the time it deserves. We got to step aside for commercial break, but we're coming right back with Ellis Henican and Ford O'Connell right after this short commercial break. Welcome you back to America's Forum. I'm John Bachman. We want to get right back to our panel with Ellis Henican, TV commentator and columnist at Newsday, and Ford O'Connell, Republican strategist. Ellis, go ahead and finish up your comment because you said sensitive. I wanted to give you the time it deserves.
I forget what I was saying, honestly. Well, we're talking about Ferguson, right?
Yeah, well, maybe we should move on. We talked a lot about Ferguson because there are a couple other items I want to get to. And it's namely a new Quinnipiac poll. And it's the Quinnipiac poll that Ann Romney, if she does cuss, maybe cussed when she saw today because it has her husband, Mitt Romney, leading all potential GOP candidates. Ford, let me start with you. Why can't the GOP get over this? Mitt Romney's probably not going to run again, but yet they still want him to.
Well, I think part of it is that we have a lot of candidates who are going to run a lot of party divisions, and frankly, he's the candidate with the highest name ID. Let me be honest with you. The only way Mitt Romney's running is if everyone else crashes and burns. And really, at the end of the day, we also have a lot of unknown candidates. A lot of voters don't, know. And until we let the horses run, and until we find out who can actually beat Hillary Clinton, we're just not going to know. And that's why. We look at these early polls, I think they're absolutely ridiculous. And people say, well, he can beat President Obama today. Well, maybe so can I. So really, this is about 2016.
Let's be honest,
who can win,
Ford.
because
Let's
we've
be
lost
honest.
5 out of the last 6 presidential elections. And still, at the end of the day, we need to find someone who can beat Hillary Clinton. And that's just the bottom line.
All right,
John.
Ford O'Connell,
I
2016.
say run,
Ellis, go
Mitt,
ahead.
run. I mean, go, baby. It was fun the last 2 times. Why not give it another whirl?
But Ellis, he is the only
listen,
the only one in that field who actually beats Hillary Clinton in a head-to-head matchup.
Yeah, and let's see what happens if they actually get lined up against each other once. Here's the reality: there are huge structural difficulties that the Republican Party has today. Right? A couple of them are those divisions you were talking about, Ford, and a lot of them just have to do with the way the country has changed. Right? If the base of your party is aging white guys, and they're making fewer of them, and the numbers are slipping, and all the groups that are growing, you have very, very high disapproval ratings. Not a real good future ahead. You got to do something about some of those issues,
I got to
boys.
jump in on this.
All right, 20 seconds, because I want to talk about.
When Democrat.
Go ahead, Ford.
Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. I'll let you
I just love it when Democrats tell me about the Republican Party,
Great.
because at the end of the day, all they're trying to do is basically fearmonger and split us among ourselves before we can unify
You're doing
behind a
pretty
particular
well.
candidate. They've
You're
been
doing
doing it
pretty
for
well
the
on that.
last 3 cycles, and that's the bottom line. I do agree with
Pretty
Ellis
well.
that we need to get beyond the party of being just old white men. So on that front, I'll actually agree with you.
Go
Yeah,
say
okay,
hi to
all
some
right,
Latinos.
all right.
They're very nice people. They're really nice people.
Yeah, you even have friends, right, Ellis? All right. Well, I do want to talk also too about what.
I'll introduce you guys to a couple. They'd be like to meet you, I'm sure.
Well, let's talk about one
See you
Democrat
guys.
yesterday, and that's Chuck Schumer making that speech yesterday to the press club, saying that maybe it was a mistake, or actually it was a mistake, for this administration to put so much time and energy and effort in the beginning of the administration into Obamacare. Ellis, what say you, sir?
Well, listen, I mean, he makes, I think, a smart political analysis. At the time, we were in the midst of trying to pull ourselves out of that terrible Bush recession, and maybe we should have focused more on that first and then got into health care. But you know what? In Washington, you do what you can do. We've made huge improvements in the kind of health care Americans get. I don't need to give you all the numbers of the millions of people who have stuff they didn't have before. And you know what? You take it as it comes.
Chuck Schumer's point is very valid. The bottom line is this administration has lost sight of the middle class. They've not strengthened the middle class. They've jumped down every other rabbit hole, and as such, the biggest albatross around Hillary Clinton's neck is Obama and this economy. And that's what the Republicans have to get back to doing, talking to blue-collar workers and talking to the middle class and articulating a 21st century agenda that can help take the middle class to a higher place. And that's really where the Obama administration messed up, because really they had Congress, both houses of Congress. They could have done a multitude of things, and instead they went down the old progressive base move of healthcare, and healthcare. And what have they done? They've created something that nobody likes. And that's just
And
the
Chuck
bottom line.
Schumer only echoing something that Rahm Emanuel also said at the time. And I think the administration knew that the only way they were going to be able to do this monumental thing on health care is then when they had the political capital, they spent all their political capital. Was it a mistake? Yeah. Perhaps so.
But you know what? Look at what we got. I mean, the situation is way better, right? Kids who are now on insurance.
Well, way better. We got to run, guys, and I want to wrap up because way better might be an overstatement. But there are anecdotal stories, guys. There are anecdotal stories of positive. Go ahead. We got 10 seconds.
Why don't you go shut down the government again if you're still mad about that? See how that works out.
If only I could do that. If only I could shut down the government. Maybe give myself a break. Ford O'Connell, Ellis, we got to go, guys. Thanks for being with us.